What are some taboo history facts that don't get taught in school? In late imperial China, a concubine that was chosen to do the dirty deed with the emperor later that night would be pampered all day. When the night of the deed came, the palace servants stripped the girl naked, wrapped her in a silk blanket, and carried her to the emperor's bed to unwrap her there. This practice didn't take place because the imperial majesty was some kind of a freak. It was actually a security measure. Sometime earlier, a concubine tried to assassinate an emperor during doing the naughty with him, with weapons hidden in her clothing. Story 2. There was a Greek general who was supposed to lead a major expedition to Sicily. The night before he left, he got extremely wasted and walked around Athens with his other drunk friends and knocked off all the penises of the statues in the Athens. This caused him to be arrested. He missed the expedition, and they lost almost all of the men they sent to Sicily because only he knew the plan well enough to actually pull it off. Story 3. Helen Palmer, the wife of a famed author, Dr. Seuss. She was an excellent writer in her own right, though she is perhaps best known for her tragic Commit Not Alive. Seuss had frequent affairs, while Palmer was a faithful spouse and truly loved her husband. Seuss was absent throughout much of the turbulent part of her life, which was caused by disease, including a battle with cancer. Her Commit Not Alive note included this passage. Dear Ted, what has happened to us? I don't know. I feel myself in a spiral, going down, 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 into a black hole from which there is no escape, no brightness, and loud in my ears from every side I hear, failure, failure, failure. I love you so much. I am too old and enmeshed in everything you do and are that I cannot conceive of life without you. My going will leave quite a rumor, but you can say I was overworked and overwrought. Your reputation with your friends and fans will not be harmed. Sometimes think of the fun we had throughout the years. Seuss would later say that Palmer's Commit Not Alive made him feel absolutely worthless, which he admitted was more than devastating, but nevertheless, he married the very woman he was having an affair with. Story 4. The first person who was sentenced to an electric chair died horribly. Someone forgot to wet an essential part of the machine and he ended up with bubbling skin, melting eyes, and a foaming mouth, among other things. The amount of electricity was so strong that he began to convulse violently, so much so that he weakened the straps. He twitched so erratically that his index finger dug through the palm of his hand. The entire room smelled like burning flesh, and the stench even fermented some clothes. Many people who came to watch had fainted during the execution. But do you know what's even more horrible? They heard him wheezing after they turned the electricity off. Story 5. If you look up Edward Russell in a history book or even Wikipedia, you learn about his military service, including Admiral of the Royal Fleet for some famous battles. What they don't teach, however, is that he threw a party so epic that it's still being talked about 300 years later. In 1694, he threw a party for officers, and with 6,000 guests coming, he wanted to make it special. So, he made the world's largest cocktail. He drained the garden fountain and used it as a giant punch bowl with hundreds of gallons of liquor, half a ton of sugar, thousands of lemons, etc. He hired bartenders to paddle around in boats, scoop it up, and serve it to the attendees. At some point it began to rain, so they put a tent up over the fountain to prevent it getting watered down. About a week after they started, they had drank every last drop. The fountain was dry and the party was over. Story 6. During the age of sail, anytime a large ship would come to the port, the men often wouldn't be allowed shore leave for a few days. So you would see small boats, packed with love sellers, heading out to the ship. Larger ships would often have over 500 men aboard, so there could definitely be a couple hundred ladies brought aboard. Behind the captain's back, of course. And with virtually no privacy aboard, you would have spaces in the ship with hundreds of couples going at it at once. There were definitely a lot of captains that didn't allow any women aboard, so the unlucky sailors on those ships would just have to wait until they could go ashore. Story 7. I know a couple of those. Number 1. The creator of the vibrator was George Taylor. It was originally made as a steam-powered device that was used to cure a disease called hysteria by massaging the pelvic region. Number 2. Empress Wu Zetian of China asserted her dominance over male officers by making them kneel before her and pleasure her orally. Number 3. For a long time, royal European women gave birth in front of spectators. They would pour into the bedchambers to watch the babies arrive. Number 4. Plymouth Colony of British North America convicted a hung young man committing bestiality. It was one of the first hangings in the New World. The 16-year-old Thomas Grander was hanged to death for indulging in buggery with a mare, a cow, 2 goats, many sheep, 2 calves, an ostrich, allegedly, and a turkey. As mentioned in his court report from 1642, his hangman was one John Holmes. Number 5. Nelson Rockefeller, former vice president of USA, suffered a heart attack and died while having the naughty with his 25-year-old assistant. He was 70. Story 8. The German army was given methamphetamines during their invasion of France, Belgium, and the Netherlands in the 1940s. This was the other part of Blitzkrieg that isn't really talked about. For the first 3 days, the German army advanced without rest, not stopping or sleeping for 3 days straight. If you got tired, they just gave you more meth. The drug may have also played a role in why the Panzer Division refused to stop, even after being ordered to several times by the High Command. They only finally stopped advancing when Hitler personally ordered the halt. Story 9. Okay man, wow. So the entire life of Julie Aubigny never gets discussed, but it's absolutely fascinating. The fact that Lord Byron gets talked about as a player, but she doesn't, is a damn dirty shame. But the existence of such a woman shows us a lot about the era that she lived in. Julie Aubigny was a daughter of a French king's master of the horse, basically cavalry commander, manager of the royal stables. As such, she was trained in horsemanship and swordsmanship as a child, arts at which she greatly excelled. After she got caught canoodling with a minor, another courtier, her dad married her off to some older minor noble. Well, Julie Aubigny was not one to simply do what good girls do. So, finding marriage with a somewhat nobody kinda dull, she ran off with her boyfriend. They toured France, going from inn to inn, doing singing and exhibition sword fighting shows, riding on horseback to go from place to place. Well, eventually Julie got bored of her man, so she ran off with her girlfriend, a daughter of a nobleman. Now when he found out about the affair, this nobleman did the normal thing that you did with a disgraced daughter at the time. Ship her out to the convent and tried to make her forgotten. This is when Julie took matters in her own hands. She joined the convent to have a hot, illicit, sexy lesbian nun getting naughty, if you know what I mean. They left the convent by the only logical route, burning the place down and faking their own deaths. This, understandably, freaked out her lover out a bit, who ran back to her family. The dad had Julie condemned in absentia for kidnapping. Now, remember when I said Julie used to tour France singing? Well, this comes in handy for her now, because Louis XIV, King of France, decides to pardon her and offer her a career in the opera. She would continue her canoodling ways, having many lovers, both men and women. One evening, she even got into 3 duels against noblemen whose wives she had seduced. And even though they attacked her at the same time, she defeated all of them. She died of an unknown reasons at the age of 33. Her gravesite is, to this day, unknown. A life like this, so scandalous, seems unlikely, but is very much the product of her era. The French king of the time was trying to separate himself from the church's influence, so to have a lady whose lifestyle was so controversial and unacceptable to religious institutions is basically proof that the king was willing to overlook such things if a performer of a good caliber would help promote the prestige of his court. Pretty damn cool, and overall a hilarious tale. Story 10. Flamethrowers weren't banned in warfare because it sucks balls to get lit on fire. They were banned because when sprayed into enclosed spaces, bunkers, caves, and tunnel complexes, you are essentially gassing everyone inside with carbon monoxide. There were caves in the Pacific theater of World War II where dozens of Japanese soldiers were killed by a single flamethrower operation. Many, if not most, wouldn't even have burns, some never even seeing the flames. Apparently, Americans didn't actually learn how they've been killing them until after the war.